everyone. Hello. For those in the audience, you might want to put the headphones on just to make sure you can hear us over the clamour of lunch that's happening right now. But yeah, hello everyone. Welcome along to the Edie Extra stage at Edie 24, which is the sustainability event of the year. So Edie Extra is a new channel that Edie is soon to be launching, basically to get closer to our audience and talk about the challenges, initiatives, projects for the sustainability professionals as much as for the business itself. So it's going to be a new multimedia format channel that we'll soon be launching. And at Edie 24, this is the kind of soft launch of the Edie Extra channel, and we've got a number of quick fire discussions taking place across the 2 days about some really kind of big, hairy subjects, to the point where half an hour and 20 minutes is going to be quite tight to fit it all in, but we'll do our best on that today. So thank you for the audience here tuning in live, and of course to those listening and watching the broadcast later on. So this lunchtime session is focused on carbon offsetting, described as either A, an essential path to net zero, or a dangerous distraction. Speaking of distractions, I know there's lunch going on right now, so thank you guys in the audience for coming along and listening to this. I'm Edie's editor, Matt Mace, and joining me for this panel discussion today, we have Adele Cheli, who is the Partnerships and Strategy Director at GSK, and Professor Paolo Taticchi, who is the Professor in Strategy and Sustainability and Co-Director of the UCL Centre for Sustainable Business. So thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
So maybe we can just start, with a kind of big scale question, but as you answer that, feel free to obviously introduce yourself and why this session in particular is relevant to you guys. So the title of the session is this essential path to net zero or not? So my question is, do you think offsets have a role in reaching net zero and driving climate action? Quite a loaded question to start, but Adele, maybe we could start with you.
Absolutely, and hi everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Adele, and I work at GSK in the sustainability team, and why this is relevant to me is because as part of our strategy, I lead on all our carbon credits portfolio. So a very relevant question that we have asked ourselves, of course. So for us at GSK, we're a global biopharma company. We really follow the science. The science is very clear that decarbonizing within your supply chain, so across Scope 1, 2, and 3, is fundamental, but it's not enough. So if we want to have a chance to remaining below 1.5, we need to do the decarbonization, and we need to take responsibility of the unabated emissions that we will have. So that's our approach to this topic and to this issue. So we have a target of reducing by 80% our Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions by 2030. So quite an ambitious target, going beyond SBTi. And then we also want to take responsibility for that future emissions we cannot abate. So we do that by investing in nature projects now for the future. And I can say more about that.
Yeah, we'll definitely be touching on that other problem.
So key part of our nature and climate action.
Good. And Paolo, I'd like to bring you in onto that.
Yeah.
What is the role of offsetting in net zero?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be with everyone here. Thank you for the invitation. I guess I'm the second Italian in the panel here, and I've been active in this field of sustainability for a while. Basically, from a research perspective at UCL, where we basically have a lot of projects that are looking at sustainable transformation, but also as an entrepreneur, helping companies with sustainable transformation. I guess my take on this is very similar to Adele's one. This means, of course, carbon offsetting plays a very important role. I guess it's important because, first of all, in some industries, it's impossible to completely reduce emissions. So at some point, you are forced to deal with carbon offsetting. So it's part of the strategy, but I guess it should be the last option of any kind of strategy there. And basically, I believe that it's quite different when you look at large organizations and small organizations. I guess large organizations tend to have more comprehensive strategies and approaches to decarbonization, while SMEs very often they look for the short, easy solutions, and at times there is, I guess, a misunderstanding that carbon offsetting is that kind of solution, is there to fix your problems, and it's not. It's part of the options you have, options that we are going to probably use later. I guess from a big system perspective, carbon offsetting is important because we know that climate change is also a time related problem. So we need to have a sense of urgency when it comes to decarbonization, and therefore when organizations can't reach their targets in the short term because of other priorities or because of problems they might have, carbon offsetting is there to help.
And I think the carbon offsetting debate is really interesting because it is very nuanced, but also there's a view of it of just carbon offsetting bad, businesses doing it bad as well. And we are seeing examples of some businesses that are essentially offsetting their way out of trouble. They're paying to move the problem elsewhere so they can carry on polluting it. It looks good on a spreadsheet in that sense. And I think that might mean that other businesses get a bit jittery about the idea of saying how they're using carbon offsets. Some are saying we're not going to use it until we figure out our decarbonisation plans. How can businesses, I suppose offset is the word, concerns around stakeholders, whether those consumers, investors, and that you are utilising carbon offsets in a way that is kind of scientifically viable, and you are still focusing on kind of deep, ambitious decarbonisation levels. So,
absolutely, that's a very important question, and I think the key is on a couple of things. Progress. You need to show that you're walking the talk. So, for us, we say we invest in nature protection and restoration to take responsibility of what we cannot abate while we decarbonize quite aggressively. So you need to show that you're actually decarbonizing. So there is an element of you need to show progress. And I think the second part is transparency. You said it, there are a lot of nuances here. The devil is in the detail. And there are so many different approaches, interpretation. So it's quite a complex topic and issue. Some things, even the range of credits, there is really bad, really good, and everything in between. So it's not easy to be categorical, and say yes or no. But the key is to be transparent, I think, and in explaining how you go about things, why, what you do, but also what you learn. We're quite humble in this because we think we're leading in this approach and we're doing a lot of action on the ground, but we also know we're not going to get it perfect all the time. So we need to learn and learn out loud and make sure that we continuously show the progress and learn, and then we adjust our plans based on that learning.
Paolo, what's your kind of view on the offsetting, potentially greenwashing aspect of it all?
Yeah, I guess that's the problem, of course. The journey to net zero is a transition, right? So it's a journey that many corporations probably started in the last 5 years and is going to be there for 30 years. So when you are in these type of major transitions, in the early stages, you always have a lot of imperfections and problems. And I guess, the quality of carbon offsetting projects, the lack of, transparency, it's something that, we have seen, that we are experiencing, but I guess it's going to get better in the years coming. I guess one of the reasons why corporations today work on sustainable transformation is that because they are aware that this is also important for their reputation. There was a study a couple of years ago that suggested that 40% of the good reputation of a company today is explained by their sustainability decisions. So I guess, companies need to be very careful when it comes to greenwashing these days because everyone is watching them. So it's very, very dangerous.
And Paolo, you touched earlier on the kind of different approaches between like SMEs and larger companies. And I think what we're establishing here is there's no kind of silver bullet or one-size-fits-all approach to utilising this. But is there an ideal approach when a business starts to look at carbon markets and offsets and how they should approach? What are the kind of key considerations they need to make sure they're utilising this in the right way?
Yeah. I guess, first of all, you need to have a high-level strategy, right? And I guess very often in strategy we have this idea that we know exactly what we wanted to do in the years coming. And that is not going to work in the field of net zero. You are dealing with a lot of uncertainty. You are dealing with the idea that there are going to be technologies that are going to help you in the future, but you don't know when they are going to be available and when they are going to be cost effective. So I think you need to have a vision, first of all. You need to have a high-level plan, and you need to be able to basically build smaller plans every 3-5 years that will help you to stay in a certain trajectory. So I think for me, one of the important things, this is valid for both large organizations and the small organizations, is that if you recognize that net zero is an important part of your journey and you take it seriously, you need to build the capabilities. Because unfortunately, today in organizations large and small, we still lack know-how. And we need that to basically go through these complex journeys of transformation.
And Adele, how did you then map the role to play in that kind of very ambitious strategy that you referenced? It would have been almost easy to lean on offsets a bit too much, but you kind of have taken a step back and make sure you're doing it right. What were the steps to success for that?
Absolutely. So I think the very first step, and maybe to build on what Paolo said and then move to your question, is I think every business should really recognize that taking action on climate and nature is the business issue. So it's not a cost, it's an investment in the future, because climate change and nature loss are disrupting not just community resilience, health, but business resilience, supply chain. So I think that's a fundamental shift in business mindset, right? Because then you start to see this as part of your strategy, as part of how you do business, not as an add-on cost or a nice to have. So in this context, what we did actually is very similar to what Paolo outlined, because we really look at what is technologically feasible for us to achieve in terms of reductions across scope 1, 2, and 3. And we know that one of our biggest source of carbon emission is actually on patient use. So we really look at the details of how we could get there and what is technologically possible. And then when we got to that 80% really ambitious space, we debated internally, what could we do about what we cannot abate? And that's the only portion that we will cover with carbon credits. We're not going to cover more. So if we not necessarily achieve the 80%, we're not going to, contribute more of that, because the point is not to get out of other targets, it's to genuinely contribute to a social target, because 1.5 is a physical limit. And if we go beyond that, the consequences are here for everybody, for businesses, for society. So it's very important that we all contribute to that on top of doing our own internal net zero as BTI.
And it's fair to say right now that the markets, and there are various ones, are kind of plagued with challenges right now. We've seen examples of businesses inadvertently buying junk credits that essentially don't make a difference. We've seen whole kind of restoration of forests that have been built through carbon offsets essentially, succumbing to wildfires, and that progress being completely wiped out. At the flip side, we are seeing some real movers trying to, and the key word is kind of integrity, build integrity into the market. So we've got the Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative, the Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets, all kind of working together, trying to kind of spearhead this and build business confidence. But right now, there was a survey from the We Mean Business Coalition at the start of the month that said that only 20% of businesses that aren't already purchasing carbon credits would consider doing so. And the main concern is just the quality of the market. So what would be your advice for any business that's perhaps just on the sidelines a little bit and just watching that kind of, market, not being sure how to act? What would your advice be, Adele?
That's a fantastic question, and I think it's also a big challenge, right? How do we get more business to take action now instead of waiting and watching, with all the complexity and the risks, right, of taking action now? And I think our approach to this is yes, the market is not perfect, but that's not a reason to step out. It's too important to fail. So my ask for other businesses would be actually engage more and help make it better. And there are a lot of initiatives right now. You mentioned some IFC-VCM, VCMI, that are trying to standardize what quality means. How do we assess quality? What claims companies can do based on action. So it is getting better in the right direction. But I think the biggest learning for us is actually being in the market. Assessing project is extremely difficult, and you can never guarantee that what you're investing on, will not catch fire. But there is a lot of due diligence you can do, and nowadays actually there are a lot of amazing tools. There are rating agencies to help you facilitate that decision making, and there is a lot of due diligence we do, for example, with experts, considering human rights, considering the nature impact, the carbon accounting, to really make sure that what you're investing in is high quality And until a definition is there, I think the best definition of high quality is that real impact is happening on the ground for people, nature, and climate. If that's what the project does, then it's a positive.
No, absolutely. Paolo, I'd love your views.
No, I just wanted to add that when you are looking to buy carbon offsets, basically the mindset should be not to look for a supplier. You are looking for a partner. And that's basically a partner who is going to be, there for a period of time. It's going to be part of your journey to net zero. So I guess the magic word is the one that Adele used, which is due diligence. Due diligence, due diligence, due diligence. And I guess you need, to be aware that at the moment the market is a jungle. Let's be honest. If you have organizations that are paying half than you and double than you, there is a problem there, right, in the market. So I guess you need to basically look at quality, not price, and you need to understand that a bad partner could have implications for your reputation, could have implications for what you wanted to achieve.
And as the market kind of sorts itself out, and hopefully as more kind of high quality options do come to the forefront, is that there's a risk that kind of the doors open and businesses kind of flood the market, try to get in, purchase those high quality credits. The supply-demand issue there's already projections about what these markets could be worth moving forward. We know businesses are dealing in kind of economic uncertainty right now. Edie ran a survey of 300 business professionals last month. The biggest kind of internal challenge right now was access to finance. If costs are projected to rise in these markets, bearing in mind, sure, they're high quality, but there is still this kind of concern around the kind of reputation of utilising them. How can a sustainability professional build the business case for using something that could rise in costs and still have these aforementioned concerns around them? Adele?
Great question. And I'm thinking about, so I'll share what we do, and then we can, it's hard for me to talk for all their companies. I think Paolo is more, I can talk for GSK. But the way in which we're going about this is we are investing in nature projects now, and these projects are early stage. So there is a lot of balancing act that we need to assess around the risks of investing in early stage, because of course that means anything could happen. And we have very little control because they're not our own project, right? We invest through partners. But at the same time, if we invest in the right nature protection and restoration projects now, those credits will be available later. So what we're trying to do with our action is to give early finance to projects, to the right partners, is to help the market scale so that more credits will be available later in the future, and hopefully scale with the right quality, because we are quite tough in our due diligence, and we really try to build aspects to projects when we feel there are gaps. So our way of going about it is to really invest now for the future, and that creates, helps the business case, because ultimately if prices are going up incredibly, if your strategy is only to buy from the spot market, you're completely up to price fluctuation and you control very little of the quality, right? Because you just buy a commodity. So what we're trying to do is actually invest in early stage so that we are aware of what's happening in the project. We're learning, we can help if needed, but also for a portion of our credits, we will be less, 100% exposed to the price fluctuation in the future.
Perfect. And yeah, Paolo, I'd love to bring you in on what the business should be doing.
I guess the approach of GSK seems to be very sensitive and reasonable. I guess because of the complexity of this market, it makes sense to experiment, also to learn what works. I don't have the answer to your question, but I envisage that this market is gonna have big changes probably 3-4 years from now. I've done a lot of conversations recently with consulting firms here in the UK, and basically many of them told me that they did internal research on their clients, and they basically expect that many of their clients, for example, are going to miss some of the targets they set for 2030, for example. So if that is the case, at that point, many of them will probably, consider, I guess, using a carbon offsetting more, and that will basically boost demand. And I guess at that point, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the market. If the volume going up is going to reduce the prices or increase the prices. I'm betting on the second one, but I think it is a kind of dangerous scenario for companies.
And I think it's very easy to look at carbon offsetting through the lens of one credit equates to X ton of carbon. We can put that into our reporting and show we're going towards net zero. But we touched upon nature a bit as well. But is there a danger that businesses get kind of stuck in this kind of carbon tunnel and look at it that way when actually offsetting and even insetting for businesses to do that could create some kind of social value, not just in nature restoration as well, but kind of providing communities with kind of income and livelihoods. I think as well, the pandemic kind of made people fall back in love with nature a bit and realize the kind of mental health attributes that nature restoration and being in nature can bring. How do businesses articulate that, or can they?
You're touching on a critical point. And actually one point that it's very important for us at GSK, and it's the fact that for us, investing in this nature project is not a climate-only investment. We have dual targets. We have climate targets and nature target, quite specific across freshwater, ocean, land, and atmosphere. But the beauty and the power of nature is that nature, with one solution, can have positive impact on climate, on biodiversity, water, but also on people. And that's fundamental for us. How we articulate it, for example, in our sustainability strategy, our investments in nature sits in the middle, and it really delivers for climate and for nature target. So it's really it's the bridge or the conduit between these two strategies of climate and nature. And actually, for us, one of the most important points is if we look at what the science and the UN says, they say that we will need about 500 billion a year of investment in nature-based solutions by 2030, right? A staggering number. And our thinking is, how can we make sure that those investments really drive positive impact for the three dimensions, the climate, nature, and people? So one way in which we are looking at this is actually we have built a toolkit that is open source and anybody can access it, together with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, AMREF, WWF, and other experts at WCSD as well, to really look at how can we enhance in nature projects, in carbon offsetting projects, the social and the health component. Because what we're seeing is that we're looking at them separately, but they are, when you go into a community and you talk about nature, you also talk about the social aspect, you talk about health, it's all connected. So how can we really make sure that we look at this project trying to maximize multiple aspects is key.
Brilliant. Paolo?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we need to go back to the problem we are trying to address. Climate change is not just an environmental problem, it's an environmental and a social problem. We have evidence that communities in developing countries, for example, suffer disproportionately the consequences of extreme weather events. So if you look at climate change as an environmental and a social problem, you want basically to explore solutions, including carbon offsetting, that create environmental and social value. So I think that should be the right approach. I guess we need to be careful though on one aspect. I see a lot of organizations that when they start looking into opportunities for creating social value, they tend very often to develop projects in, for example, developing countries that are very far from their operations. And I believe you need to balance that. You want to make sure that you create the social value also in your local communities, in your region. And then, of course, you can help communities that need support. So it needs to be balanced.
And bringing this all kind of back to the title about this, whether it's essential or a kind of dangerous distraction, maybe dangerous, we've established dangerous distractions not quite well, but it's certainly a careful consideration for businesses. And just to finish on, bear in mind we've got sustainability professionals in the audience and those kind of listening in at a later date who are probably carefully considering this area as part of their strategies. If you had to kind of give them one kind of essential bit of advice, whether it's kind of a company starting their first steps out of this, they're kind of, yes, we are going to utilize offsetting, but we're not sure how. What's that kind of one kind of key message you would like to give to them to make sure that they're doing this right? Paolo, I'm going to pick on you first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, my view is that carbon offsetting is not dangerous. It's something that organizations should approach strategically, being aware that is a risky activity. So, handle with care.
Okay, Adele?
I would say take action now, because progress is better than perfection. And if we all take action with the same intent, we will improve the market.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I'm worried that there is still a lunch break going on and there's networking opportunities, so I don't want to keep you guys or our audience any longer. So we are out of time here on the ED Extra stage, but again, a big thank you to both Paolo and Adele for your time today. And also a big thank you to the audience who are listening with us on the ED Extra stage today. The ED editorial team will be back. We've got one more session this afternoon in the afternoon break, so do come over here to check that out. And as mentioned, this is going to be a new channel for us, so you'll be able to access the videos and recordings via the ED Extra channel when that launches. You'll be able to see that via SoundCloud, iTunes and Spotify once it launches. But until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.